clarification on the Trump indictment. You have been clear that you don't want to politicize the indictment, but the president's opponents have accused him of weaponizing the DOJ. So just to be clear, can you say categorically that President Biden was not involved or influenced at all any of the decisions into indicting President Biden?
That's not a word.
At all. He was not involved. The president has been very, very clear. The Department of Justice is independent. He wants to restore the independence of the Department of Justice, and that's what you've seen. That is why we have been very, very consistent. When it comes to criminal cases, we just do not comment.
Awkward.
Has the president been briefed on any security concerns around the former president's court appearance?
So I was asked this yesterday, so was my colleague from NSC. The Admiral was asked this question when he was at the podium, and he laid out, right, and I laid out. He normally gets an update from his national security team and also his intelligence team on a daily basis, and that's usually where he gets his update. I cannot speak beyond that.
Normal.
Any additional requests for security?
Can't speak to anything beyond any request. All I can say is that we are prepared.
One final question. Sure. Is the assessment of the White House that inflation has finally peaked?
So look, I know that I know that CPI data came out today, as I just laid out this morning. Look. So what I will say is that we're making progress on fighting inflation. And that's good news. That's good news for hardworking families. That's incredibly important that we see that, and we're seeing that in this data. And I kind of said this at the top, but I'll reiterate it here. Annual inflation is at the lowest level that we have seen in more than 2 years. That's since March of 2021, and it has fallen for 11 months. And in less than half of what it was this past June, the June before this one, clearly. And wages has rose over the last year. So all of that is important. Gas prices is down by $1.40. That's because of the work that this president has done. If you think about his investment in America, if you think about his economic policy, how he wants to make sure that we're building an economy that builds from the bottom up, middle out, that is what you've seen. And I have said, and he has said many times, when it comes to his economic policy, lowering costs is his number one priority. So this is important. We're fighting inflation. We're seeing progress, and this is going to be incredibly important for Americans across the country.
So just to continue on inflation, we'll get another one after that. One of the components of the inflation data showed that rent prices are still sticky. They're just not responding the way that you hoped that they had. It's starting to remind some people of the comment that inflation was going to be transitory. So for a long time, the expectation has been that housing prices and rental prices would come down, and they just haven't. Are you starting to get worried that they're not going to come down, or what the implications are, and what can you do?
So look, we know, and it's a good question, we know housing affordability is a challenge for families. And the good news is that we are starting to see a cooling in the housing market, so that's incredibly important. And also that is why the president has taken extra steps, right? You've heard us over the last 2 years talking about the housing supply action plan that the president put forth to help close the housing supply shortfall that we have seen in the last 5 years, making it easier to use the American Rescue Plan funds to increase the supply of affordable housing, which is another part of the president's plan as it relates to lowering costs when it comes to housing or dealing with the housing market, releasing a blueprint for renters' Bill of Rights and a set of federal actions to make the rental market fairer, and calling on Congress to provide additional incentives for housing construction and support low-income families. So look, we get it. We understand what families are going through. Again, the housing market is cooling, so that's important. But the president has taken extra steps over the last 2 years to deal with the affordability aspect as it relates to housing.
Not a joke.
So are you considering additional actions since the housing prices don't seem to be responding?
So I don't have any additional actions to announce at this time, but I mean, I just laid out 4 real, constructive, comprehensive, substantive actions that this president has taken over the last 2 years to deal with certainly issues that American families have to deal with when it comes to affordable housing.
On Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg just said that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is making progress. The Ukrainians are making progress, and that's important in terms of strengthening their hand when they get to the negotiating table. Does the White House share his view that the Ukrainians are, in fact, making advances, and can you give us any details?
I know that President Zelensky has spoken to this. He says the counteroffensives operations have begun, but certainly I'm going to leave that to Ukraine to speak to. That's basically what the president was asked when he was when he was asked as it relates to the military operations. We're just going to let them, President Zelensky and his team, speak to that. And look, what we can say is that we know that the Ukrainian people are brave and they are tough. We have seen this the last 15 months. They have been incredibly impressive. We have done everything that we can to make sure that they are successful in the battlefield, and that's not just us. More than 50 countries have come behind Ukraine and supported their efforts, their fight against Russia's aggression, and to fight for their freedom. And so we're going to continue to do that. We know that there are difficult challenges ahead, but we feel that they are prepared. I'm certainly not going to get into military operations or what's going on the battlefield. Again, I'll let Ukraine speak to that.
Thanks, Karine. I wonder, do you believe that you violated the Hatch Act with those comments about MAGA Republicans?
So what I can say is, at the time, I was given the sign-off, right, to use that terminology. And I said this just moments ago. The letter that we received was from last week. We received that letter for something that I said months ago, so it was retroactive, if you will. I'm just not going to get into giving my opinion or thoughts. I'm just going to lay out the facts for all of you. You all are going to report this and have reported it. And we're going to have a routine conversation, not myself, but clearly the White House counsel is going to have a routine conversation with OSC to talk about this. I'm just going to leave that there.
The term that you, but also the White House press shop has used a lot in paper statements and everything else. So are you guys going to continue to use that terminology going forward?
So look, I'm not going to get ahead of what the outcome of this might be. The White House counsel certainly is reviewing the opinion, and they will have a routine conversation with OSC, as they should. This is going to be an ongoing process. As you stated, we have used this term many times before. It's nothing new in the context, and the way we use it is in the context of talking about their policies and in talking about their values. That's how we have used this term, and so I will, I'll leave it there, and they'll continue to have a conversation.
I know that the White House counsel's office sometimes conducts informational sessions with staff to educate them about the Hatch Act, what the guardrails are, etc. When's the last time that you participated in one of those, and do you intend to get some kind of a refresher?
So I don't have any refresher to speak to at this time, but yes, I've sat in many conversations that have been held by the council on the Hatch Act specifically. I know I did one recently this year. I just don't have the exact date in mind.
And then last question. I wonder, as it relates to the case that former President Trump is facing, is there any world in which President Biden would consider pardoning the former president?
I'm just not going to speak to that. No comment.